The first reporters on the scene thought of one thing: a neutron bomb. The buildings stood untouched. Everyone inside them was dead. By morning, close to 1,700 people and thousands of animals had died in their sleep. No fire, no blast, no warning. What could kill this fast, this silently, and vanish without a trace, even snuffing out the flames of cooking fires? The answer lay in a lake. Lake Nyos, a crater lake in the volcanic highlands of northwest Cameroon. Locals had a name for it: the Bad Lake. Legend said an evil spirit rose from the water to kill. Survivor Joseph Nquane woke that night smelling something terrible. He could not speak. He collapsed, reaching for his daughter. He woke hours later. She was dead beside him. In his own words, "I could not speak. I became unconscious." Investigators who arrived days later suspected the worst: a massacre, a chemical attack, even a bomb. The truth was stranger. The lake itself, normally a brilliant blue, had turned deep, rusty red. Its iron-rich depths churned to the surface. To understand what really happened, we don't go back hours. We go back 9,000 years to how this lake was born. Lake Nyos formed as a volcanic crater, a maar, roughly 9,000 years ago, far older than early estimates once claimed. Remote and ringed by cliffs, the lake sits deep in Cameroon's volcanic highlands, far from roads, power, or warning systems. Nyos is meromictic. Its layers never mix with the seasons, the way most lakes do. Gas sinking here has nowhere to go. Far below, in the Earth's mantle, magma forms at 60 to 100 kilometers deep, releasing carbon dioxide that slowly rises. That gas seeps into the lake near the very bottom, through a buried fault, almost 200 meters down. Under that much water, the gas stays dissolved, trapped the same way carbonation stays sealed inside an unopened bottle of soda. How close the lake truly was to bursting is still disputed. Some studies suggest it was nearly saturated. Others say it wasn't. But once disturbed, the process feeds itself. Rising water releases gas. Gas lifts more water, releasing still more gas. What disturbed it that night is still not certain. A landslide, most likely. Perhaps a small eruption below, or a cold, heavy rain. Whatever woke the lake that Thursday evening in August 1986 was about to trigger something the world had never seen. It was Thursday, the 21st of August, 1986, around 9 at night, when villagers heard a deep rumble from the lake. The rumbling lasted only 15 to 20 seconds. Then the lake itself erupted, a fountain of water and foam roughly 120 meters high. Waves surged 25 meters above the surface and as high as 80 meters at one lakeside cliff, stripping it bare. In that single burst, the lake released between 100,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide, the same event measured by weight. That gas was about half again as dense as air, so it sank, rolling downhill through the valleys at 20 to 50 kilometers an hour. Around 50 meters thick, the ground-hugging cloud moved silently over villages where families were already asleep. There was no fire, no blast. The gas simply pushed the oxygen away. Most victims never woke to understand what was happening. Even cooking fires in its path were snuffed out instantly, a small, visible sign of an invisible killer passing through. By dawn, the lake's surface had dropped almost a meter. Its water, once brilliant blue, had turned a deep, rusted red. An entire region had gone silent overnight, but with no roads, no phones, no power, nobody outside yet knew a thing had happened. It took roughly a day and a half, sometimes longer, before outsiders even learned something had gone wrong. A man cycling toward Nyos found a dead antelope, then dead rats, then a dog, all unmarked. He assumed lightning had struck. First responders feared the worst, a contagious disease, a chemical attack, even deliberate poisoning of the lake. Doctors soon ruled that out. The cause of death was asphyxiation. No wounds, no infection, just a sudden absence of air. Within days, scientific teams converged from Germany, the United States, and Japan, all racing to explain the unexplainable. One camp of scientists argued this had to be volcanic. Another insisted the lake itself, somehow, was the true source. But surveys of the lakebed found no fresh volcanic rock, no vent, no disturbed sediment. The volcanic theory could not hold. A landmark 1990 study finally settled it. The lake's own dissolved gas had erupted from within. A new kind of disaster had a name. But one question that same research left open still hasn't closed. What exactly disturbed the lake that evening remains genuinely unclear. The mechanism was understood, but understanding a killer doesn't mean it's gone. 2 years earlier, a smaller lake had already tried to warn them. On the 15th of August, 1984, about 100 kilometers away, Lake Monoun erupted the very same way. 37 people died. About 10 passengers stepped down from a stalled truck nearby and collapsed within minutes. 2 who stayed aboard survived. They were simply above the gas. Monoun's deaths were first blamed on terrorism, then poison. The government largely covered it up. No warning ever reached Lake Nyos. Only after Nyos, 2 years later, almost to the day, did scientists finally recognize the same mechanism at work. The fix that eventually worked was almost absurdly simple. A pipe lowered deep into the water, letting gas escape gradually instead of catastrophically. Once flowing, the escaping bubbles lift the water themselves, self-sustaining, like a bottle that never needs shaking again. The first permanent pipe went in at Nyos in January 2001. By 2019, it could hold the gas safely on its own. A second danger remains less known. The lake is held back only by a narrow, weakening wall of loose volcanic rock. Roughly 12,000 survivors were eventually resettled into camps. Years later, some still describe the land near Nyos as eerily silent. Lake Nyos, at least, is being watched now. But it was never the only lake capable of this. And it isn't even the largest. Only 3 lakes on Earth are known to hold gas this way: Nyos, Monoun, and one far larger, Lake Kivu. Kivu dwarfs Nyos by almost any measure, something like 2,000 times the volume and roughly 1,000 times the dissolved gas. Worse still, Kivu holds not just carbon dioxide, but methane, a gas that doesn't just suffocate, it can ignite. Around 14,000 people lived near Lake Nyos in 1986. Around 2 million people now live around Lake Kivu. Sediment records suggest Kivu has overturned before, roughly once every 1,000 years. Scientists still argue over whether that risk is rising. In 2021, a nearby volcano erupted toward the city of Goma. Engineers on Kivu's gas platform feared the lake, not the lava. An extraction project now pulls methane from Kivu for electricity. At current rates, it removes less than 5% of the gas in 25 years. Limnic eruptions are strange, as disasters go. Rare, but as Nyos proved, both predictable and preventable if the world chooses to act. The open question is whether anyone lowers a pipe into Lake Kivu before its far larger reservoir of gas decides to answer for itself. Lake Nyos taught the world this kind of disaster could be understood. Lake Kivu may be about to teach the world something else entirely. We only have to hope. the lesson never comes.